Goeiedag, good day, fellow South Africans and citizens of the world.
I've been looking around for salvation. I've been looking around for the truth. All around me I see frustration, and I looked all over till I found you. I sit and listen to your stories, and you're telling me, please don't worry. There's a lot in this world you should know, and love in life is where you should go. If you're looking for somewhere to go, if you're looking for someone to know, if you're looking for someone to guide you, then love in life will guide you.
Goeienaand, good evening, fellow South Africans and citizens of the world, and welcome to tonight's live stream. And before we get onto the subject of tonight's live stream, I do just want to offer condolences to Nat Quinn, a family member living in South Africa. Not a direct family member, but indeed a family member was murdered. And his name was Dion, and apparently they can't recover the body because the body is down a deep mine tunnel, funny enough, because we're talking about mines tonight. But our condolences, Nat, to you, and we will be praying for your family and obviously relatives as well. All right, now let's move on to tonight's subject, guys. Tonight's subject is all about the Zama Zamas and also about the dangers of uranium in Johannesburg, and that's on your doorstep if you live in the suburbs of Johannesburg. But before we do that, I do want to play you a couple of little video clips which kind of spell out the conditions that these guys work under and how dangerous it is being a Zama Zama. But it's not just because of the working conditions, it's because of the other Zama Zamas. And they often get into gang wars, and believe me, they're not nice. Let me show you a couple of clips. Here we go. I'll start off with this one, which is about the cache of weapons found that the Zama Zamas had in that little suburb of Riverlea near the city of Johannesburg. Here we go.
I would suggest, MMC, I would suggest we all keep a distance, leave the explosives.
Yes, and anything can happen, especially this one.
You don't know what, yeah, you see.
Especially this one.
This one here,
Yeah.
you're correct.
These are, let's go out, torch.
Yeah.
Go live quickly. This is a video. Because now, yeah, go to the video. You see, we told you, motherfuckers, that will fuck you up. We got you on these other guns again. And we're gonna go all around. Your pendukas even here like that. You see, many guns. You see rifles and all of that in here. We actually busted them, and they ran away down here. You know, but we got them. This other motherfucker there as well. The sharp. Yeah, you see, JMPD tactical units are here and all of that. So they were shooting at us, and we shot them back. Another one wanted to just make it peacemaker. You see, now we've got all these rifles and everything like that. I think we're done, guys. Yeah, okay.
All right, now, there you get the idea. Not a good lifestyle, but this is actually film footage taken under the streets of Johannesburg, believe it or not. You know, when you're in Johannesburg and you're walking on the pavement, you think you're actually walking on solid ground. Sometimes, not so much. And here's the proof. Let's have a look at that.
The more we take, BMU. We can ask City Power to bring Mariette. I can ask City Power to bring the generator, the lights.
Yeah,
remember that
we're
scene?
gonna need lights.
Yeah, remember that scene in Rolettenville. Remember, so they brought us lighting there. I'm gonna phone City Power now. Because we won't be able to remove all this thing before it gets done. Yeah. We need to remove everything. Everything. But I carry after the bomb squad has declared the scene safe.
All right, so that gives you an idea of the life of a Zama Zama. And, you know, it certainly isn't a good one. But that scene that you've just seen could be right underneath your house if you live in Johannesburg. You just don't know there's a whole new world happening down below. Now, I'm going to get our guest on. That's Mariette Liefferink. Let me just cross to her. Here we go. Hi, Mariette.
Hello, good evening, Scott.
Good to see you.
And you too?
I've just shown two little video clips, one of the Under the Streets of Johannesburg and the other one, the guns at River Lee with the Zama Zamas. And I have a question that's come through the side chat that I just want to put to you to start this all off. And Nat has asked, please ask Mariette to explain what a Zama Zama suite is.
Just explain again what the Zama Zama suite is.
Yeah, or S-U-I-T-E, or it might be suit. Zama Zama suit or Zama Zama suite. Do you know what that is?
Yes. Well, I can perhaps just give a little background with regards to the Zama Zamas. Because of the fact that some of the mining companies, their production is in decline, especially within the gold fields of the Witwatersrand. We have seen a proliferation of illegal mining. And I also just want to mention that many of the mining companies put their assets, when it's no longer profitable, in care and maintenance. And then there is no access control or management or mitigation measures of the tailing storage facilities. Or their mining right areas, and that also has resulted in a proliferation of illegal mining. The fact that some of the mining companies go into liquidation, and there is no requirement in terms of our Mineral and Petroleum Resources Development Act for a liquidator to apply for closure or for the implementation of the rehabilitation plan, or to top up funds for the rehabilitation, that also has resulted in a proliferation of illegal mining. And illegal miners currently, some of them of course only want to earn a living, but there's many global syndicates involved in illegal mining. These are criminal syndicates. So some of these illegal miners start off just to earn a living, but often they because of the informal nature of illegal mining, they are often then also solicited by these criminal syndicates, and they end up in these criminal syndicates, the web of these criminal syndicates. I also just want to mention that in terms of the research that has been done by the South African Human Resource Commission, they have found, and if I may just be permitted to read what they have found in the investigations, and my organization was part of the Section 11 Advisory Committee of the South African Human Rights Commission in their investigation of the artisanal and small-scale mining. They mentioned that not all individuals or groups are involved in criminal syndicates. The informal nature of artisanal and small-scale mining, as well as the non-existent legal protection, make it amenable to illegal dealings. Not all communities have the same views around artisanal mining. So some communities may accept artisanal miners, and some communities, such as the Riverlea community, which you have shown on your introduction, are not amenable or not in support of artisanal mining. Not all artisanal minings are illegal immigrants or foreigners, that is non-nationals. And the current socio-economic situation in South Africa, this is now the high levels of non-employment, as well as the widespread poverty, has pushed many into unregulated artisanal mining. And there is a direct link between a retrenchment of mine workers and informal mining, because many of these informal miners come from our neighboring countries such as Lesotho, Mozambique, as well as Zimbabwe. They have the skills to do mining, but they have been retrenched, so their only skill is to do mining. And then cessation of mining without proper closure and remediation, liquidation, care and maintenance, failure to monitor compliance with social and labour plans and environmental management program reports contribute to unlawful mining. So this perhaps explains the challenges that we face with regards to illegal mining. In order to address all these challenges, the Department of Mineral Resources and Energy in South Africa then proposed the artisanal and small-scale mining policy. This policy had been published, and if I may be permitted, I can just briefly mention to you what this policy envisions. May I proceed?
Yeah, please go ahead.
So this artisanal and small-scale mining policy proposes, but it's already been published, that artisanal and small-scale mining be reserved for South Africans, not for foreigners, and preference to issue permits to cooperatives will be given and not to individuals. Artisanal and small-scale mining is also to be limited to surface and open cast mining, in other words, not deep mining, because that, of course, introduces significant risks, both from an environmental and safety point of view. Artisanal and small-scale minings, it is envisioned, must coexist with large operations through contributing agreements, equipment leasing, technical support, and participation in the supply chain. But here I also just want to interpose that large-scale mining companies are very reticent to engage with small-scale mining or artisanal miners, because if there are any environmental degradation or if there is pollution caused by artisanal and small-scale mining, who will be held accountable or responsible for the environmental degradation and the pollution? Then the government, in terms of the artisanal and small-scale mining policy, proposes to train, empower and educate artisanal and small-scale miners. At this time, I am not aware that this has happened, and the policy and legal framework must clearly distinguish between illegal mining, that is criminal syndicates, from artisanal and small-scale mining, and the government must strengthen laws regarding criminalization of illegal mining to deter illegal mining activities, and a trade detective unit is proposed. I'm not aware that this has already been implemented. So perhaps this may not address one of your viewers' a request for an answer, but perhaps that can just help to understand what is currently the situation with regard and the status of artisanal and small-scale miners.
Right. Now, Nat has actually said, she's answered her own question, and she said it's a torture device, a kind of suit with no arms. So I guess the Zama Zamas, if someone misbehaves, they get put in this thing and they get beaten up. I'm pretty sure that's what she's talking about. Now, just talking about reports, but before we do, there's a sign behind your head with FSE on it. Do you want to tell us what your organization does?
Yes, if I might move a little, it says the FSE, presenting the interests of ordinary people in understanding and defending their constitutional rights. So we're not a political organization, we are apolitical, we are not a commercial, a non-profit organization, because non-profit organizations cannot make profits. So our focus in terms of our memorandum of incorporation is the realization of the rights in terms of Section 24 of our Constitution. That is the right to an environment that is not harmful to health and well-being. However, we also focus on inter- and intra-generational equity. In other words, that future generations must also experience the right to this environment that is not harmful to health and well-being. We also focus on sustainable ecological development and also justifiable economic development.
Right. Now look, one of the things that your organization does is produce comprehensive reports on or for government and for industry. And I'm going to share with you and with everybody watching one of those reports which looks very, very, it looks amazing. It's a report of the South African Human Rights Commission investigation hearing issues and challenges in relation to unregulated artisanal underground and surface mine activities in South Africa. Now that PDF, together with the other one that I've got here, we're going to be putting onto our Loving Life forum. So anyone watching, if they want a copy of this document, it will be available tomorrow morning from a link on the video which will be carried on Loving Life TV. And the easiest way to get that is if you get our daily email, there will, under the forum section, be a link that says free downloadable PDF, and it says report on the SHARC investigative hearing. And you can just click on that and you can download this PDF and read it in your own time. Now that I've got that out of the way, Mariette, please tell us what this is all about.
Yes. Well, first of all, I must just mention that although the South African Human Rights investigation into artisanal and small-scale mining did acknowledge that there is a need for artisanal mining to be regulated, it also acknowledged that there are significant environmental risks and human health risks associated with artisanal and small-scale mining or illegal mining. And here I just want to refer to what has happened during a recent, it was an operation conducted by it's called the Directorate for priority crime investigation, that is the Hawks.
Right.
And I was invited to accompany the Hawks on this investigation or this operation. So I personally witnessed the impact of illegal mining on the environment and also on the safety of communities. So we visited the site. The site was in Zuurbekom. It's within the West Rand of the Witwatersrand goldfields in Gauteng. And what we observed there was that illegal miners were using cyanide in order to leach the gold. And if I might just mention, it was in the residential areas of Zuurbekom, and it is an agricultural area as well. So what we found is that the cyanide levels, remember cyanide is highly toxic, that the cyanide levels were from the outlet of the dams where they process the gold. That was 420 milligrams per liter and 798 milligrams per liter respectively. Just to put it in context, in terms of the protection for birds, cattle and wildlife, the regulatory limit is 50 milligrams per liter, and the limit for free cyanide is 0.01 milligrams per liter, according to the International Cyanide Management Institute and the World Bank standard. So that would indicate the significant risk to these communities, and the risk pertains not only to the human health and the environment, but also to the air, water and soil from these illegal mining and reprocessing activities. The sites that we visited was only one of many sites within the West Rand goldfields. And that of course also imposes risks on the mine workers of the legitimate mining companies within the area, such as Sibanye-Stillwater, such as DRD Gold, Harmony Gold, and so forth.
Now, look, there was something that I found very interesting, and it's actually reaffirmed what I'm going to say now in a video that I played at the start. And what you had was a Johannesburg Municipal Department police, well, I guess he's like a municipal police person, under the ground, looking at all these weapons which they found under, this mining area for River Lee. And this same guy, I heard his earlier video where he said, we have had no support from the South African Police Service. And I think the reason he said I'm from the Johannesburg Municipal Police Department is because he wanted to make a point that the South African Police Service are not doing their job. Have you any feedback as to whether the police, the Bekeseles mob, are doing anything to try and stop this illegal activity?
As I've mentioned, we have been involved with the Hawks. I think there is the intent to address the illegal mining. However, what we often see on a daily basis, because we visit these mining sites regularly with security services, is that we often see that police officers are receiving bribes from these illegal miners, and that of course then just escalate the proliferation of illegal miners. I also, again, I'm sorry, I just want to cough. I apologize.
That's okay.
Just want to again mention that there are of course loopholes in our environmental legislation. If mining companies are put into care and maintenance, or if there is liquidation, then that often also results in the proliferation of illegal mining, because then there is no access control of these mining sites. There's not a backfilling of these open pits or the closing of open shafts. And we have also seen that the responsible authorities, such as the Department of Mineral Resources and Energy and the Council of Geoscience, that there are also capacity constraints on their in their ranks, And that has also then resulted in, well, the exacerbation of what is happening with regards to illegal mining.
Right. Now, you've made a request that we wrap up by 9 o'clock. We're about halfway through the time. And I want to actually, before we move on to the issue with uranium in the gold mines in South Africa, I want to just concentrate on the actual mining process which uses cyanide, and this happens whether it's illegal or a normal operating mine. Cyanide is used to separate the gold, and the responsibility of these companies, and you made a very, very telling point when you said that a lot of these mines which are no longer operating, the company that runs them is bankrupt, and that's a deliberate ploy, as I understand it, by business, so that they don't have to do anything to, put the land straight, clean up the cyanide, or just rehabilitate the land. They can just say, oh, the company that actually owns that land now is bankrupt, and even though that company might have just bought it 3 months before from, let's say, Anglo-American, because Anglo-American, who actually did all the mining on it, no longer owns it, they say, well, it's not our problem. I mean, that to me doesn't sound right. When are they going to tackle that problem and look at the history of the mine and then hold people accountable who've actually done the mining and caused the damage?
Yeah, of course, our legislation now acknowledges that mining companies must be held responsible for legacy issues, that is, latent and residual impacts. In other words, the polluter pays principle in terms of our National Environmental Management Act and our National Water Act has a retrospective application. However, it's not been implemented yet. Even though the law makes provision for that, we've not seen the implementation. And this is of a significant concern to us, because what has happened is that major mining companies such as Anglo-American and other mining companies, they often, when they've depleted the most valuable resources, they then simply pass the parcel. In other words, it's not necessarily that they liquidate, but what they do, they sell onto smaller mining companies that do not have the financial resources or the skill or the will to rehabilitate. So in order to obviate their closure responsibilities, these bigger mining companies then simply sell onto smaller mining companies. These smaller mining companies then in turn would liquidate or go into care and maintenance, and the result is that the environmental degradation and the pollution are then externalized to communities, that is mining affected communities, to financially beleaguered municipalities, to future generations, and also to a mute environment. So this we have often seen. This has happened with Anglo-American, it has happened with Anglo Gold Ashanti, and quite a number of other mining companies. So this issue has to be addressed, and there is an urgency attached to this issue.
Why is it not being addressed?
First of all, although the laws make provision for this retrospective application of the polluter pays principle, when I raised the issue, the issue was raised with regards to the address of acid mine drainage, because acid mine drainage was a known phenomenon within the Witwatersrand goldfield since 1903. But the historic mining companies considered groundwater to be a nuisance, so they pumped it out with no consideration, for example, of the impact of the pumping out of the groundwater and the future potential of acid mine drainage. So when I raised the issue with the then Minister of Department of Water and Sanitation, Nomvula Makonyane, she then said to me that they will not do a witch hunt on the previous mining companies. That was a firm statement, and it was also documented on a video. so that was at the time the response from government, that they will not go after the historic mining companies. So what we are now left with is that we have last men standing within the goldfields of the Witwatersrand. I'm now specifically referring to the goldfields. The last man standing will be Goldfields, that is its South Deep mine. It has a life of mine of 80 years. So it, in our opinion, it will be inequitable, it will be unfair, it will be unreasonable that the last man standing will have to be responsible for more than 120 years of gold mining activities by more than 120 mines. And we must just remember that during this 120 or more years of mining, the mines created the largest gold and uranium mining basin in the world. It extracted during 1 century 53,500 tons of gold, and from 1953 to 1995, 73,000 tons of uranium, but it left a legacy of 6 billion tons of iron pyrite tailings, which will result in acid mine drainage for many, many years after mine closure, and 600,000 tons of uranium. And here we must now touch perhaps on the uranium issue. Uranium, although it is low in radioactivity, it has an extremely long half-life. It has a half-life of 10 to the power of 10 or 10 to the power of 8, depending on its isotope. So it will remain radioactive for geological ages, long after the mines have closed, and not for biological ages. So this is another issue that has not been addressed. So if I may perhaps go on to the uranium.
But before you do, I just want to say this is a scandal. This is a scandal, and the ANC government. There's a new mines minister. I don't know if you've spoken to him, but the ANC elite.
No, it's Gwedi Matash. And
Okay.
I recently had been invited, which was an honor, to attend the review of the Mineral and Petroleum Resources Development Act. It was a summit where Gwedi Matash also presented, and I think the main objective now of the look, we are not involved in politics, so I don't want to comment on politics, but I think the main issue now is that the ANC government has realized that the mining industry, because of all the regulations and perhaps corruption, that there are now issues with regards to the investment in our mineral resources. Remember, we in South Africa, we are a very rich mineral resource country. In fact, Nelson Mandela referred to the mineral resources in South Africa as the backbone, the DNA of South Africa. But because of corruption and because of problems with regulation and legislation, the benefits of the beneficiation of mineral resources had not enriched our country. The country still is, well, especially mining affected communities are still poor, and the unemployment rate is very high. So according to Gwedi Matash, there has to be now a review of the Mineral and Petroleum Resources Development Act, so that more benefits should go to government. And that, of course, is also problematic for us, because if you curtail the impact of private investors and you give more power to the state, perhaps we may also see what has happened to our state entities like Eskom, like Transnet and all of these other, Denel and all of these other state-owned enterprises.
Well, look, I just have to say that I'm stunned because the beneficiaries of Triple B Double E, which is that broad-based black economic empowerment, are the ANC elite. They're the people like Gwede Mantashe, they're people like Cyril Ramaphosa, who's got a big shareholding in Lonro that he got just so that Lonro could meet the Triple B Double E requirements. You got these fat cat ANC guys who obviously have a lot of money invested now in these big mining companies that are able to hand over a piece of land that they have completely stuffed up. It's full of cyanide. It's going to be a problem for the local community for generations to come, and they're able to hand it over to some little company that goes bankrupt the next day and says, oops, sorry, I can't pay. And these big companies that these fat cat ANC elite are involved with can just walk away and say, not our problem. Look, clearly, this is an issue that has not been brought to the attention of the public in South Africa and needs to.
Now, there was a parliamentary portfolio committee investigation done after the liquidation of Shiva Mine, which was a Gupta-owned mine, and also Mintails, which was an Australian-listed mining company, and then the Parliamentary Portfolio Committee on Mineral Resources and Energy then mentioned that there should be some changes in legislation in order to address all these issues which we have just discussed. That report was tabled in Parliament in 2018. To date, I'm not aware if any of these recommendations have been implemented. So I think that the Parliamentary Portfolio Committee did acknowledge these loopholes in our legislation, and they made recommendations, but it seems there is no political will to implement these recommendations. But Scott, I just want to again emphasize we are not politically affiliated.
I understand that, but you know, when you got cancer, you do something about it. And the cancer in Johannesburg right now is cyanide, uranium. These are all the legacy of these big mining companies. They're not these little bankrupt ones that take over so that no one is responsible for cleaning the shit up. They're getting away with murder, and it's happening because you got the ANC fat cats who've now got substantial shareholding in these big profitable companies because that's what Triple B Double E does. It's not about I know you're not involved in politics, but this is the reality of the situation. Little Simon and Kosi in Soweto never sees 1 cent of the benefit of the way Triple B Double E double works. But if you are Cyril Ramaphosa or Gwede Mantashe, you suddenly get all these wonderful shares just being given to you, and you become a billionaire for doing nothing. And the one thing you're going to do, if you take the Zondo Commission, for example, that cost over R1 billion. Not one person has been pulled before the courts because it's all the fat cats who are actually in the firing line. And this is just another example of what we're talking about here. This is how this is me talking, not you. This is how corrupt the friggin' ANC government are. Let's just be clear on that. Now, look, let's move on to uranium because we've got about 20 minutes left. Tell us about the issues of uranium in the mines in South Africa. And again, this is where the legacy mines, the big mining houses like Anglo American, have simply walked away and said, not our problem. Yeah, back to you.
Yeah, so uranium, of course, is a byproduct of our gold ore. Within the Witwatersrand, uranium and the uraniferous waste is part of our gold mining legacy. As I've mentioned in my previous comments, it has been estimated in a report of 2008 that we currently have about 600,000 tons of uranium in our tailing storage facilities within the Witwatersrand goldfields. Perhaps just to mention, tailing storage facilities house tailings, that is the residue after gold had been extracted. Now, the tailing storage facilities are the largest man-made structures in the world, and they will stand into perpetuity. So these tailing storage facilities, it was estimated in 2008 that there are 270 of these tailing storage facilities within the Witwatersrand goldfields. It was also estimated that there are 380 radioactive mine residue areas. That it was according to the Gauteng Department of Agriculture and Rural Development's report. And there is approximately 400,000 people, or are 400,000 people living within these radioactive mine residue areas. Is mostly informal settlements. We must just here explain that often because of urban sprawl, there has been an encroachment of these informal settlements onto mining sites. So the mining sites were often, or tailing storage facilities, established in remote areas, but because of our widespread poverty, many communities then encroached upon these mine residue areas, and they've established their residential dwellings in close proximity of these radioactive mine residue areas, in some cases even on top of them, such as in the Tudor Shaft informal settlement. Now, with regards to uranium, as I've mentioned, it is low in radioactivity, but during its long half-life, it decays. And during the decay process, there are radioactive progeny that are very high in radioactivity, such as radium-226, or we also know about radon gas, which causes lung cancer amongst, it's widely accepted, it causes lung cancer amongst uranium mine workers. There are also other decay products of uranium. So it is essential that these radioactive mine residue areas that are not regulated by the National Nuclear Regulator, because the National Nuclear Regulator, if I can just explain, is the entity in terms of the National Nuclear Regulators Act of 1999 to protect the public property and the environment against nuclear damage. So they regulate the mining companies if there is a radioactivity above 250 microsieverts per annum or 1 millisievert per annum, or they regulate it if the soil is more than 500 becquerels per kilogram.
Right.
I beg your pardon?
No. I was listening. Back to you.
And then, so they regulate these mining sites. These mining sites, the mining companies are then issued with a certificate of registration or a clearance certificate. However, the National Nuclear Regulator interprets its mandate very narrowly, so it does not regulate any of these radioactive mine residue areas that are outside of mining properties. And that is the reason why communities, especially the most vulnerable, these are the communities that have chronic and acute malnutrition, communities that are characterized, for example, by substance abuse or high percentages of HIV and AIDS. These communities now are not protected in any way or manner by the National Nuclear Regulator. So we have had court cases against the National Nuclear Regulator. Incidentally, I was also a member of the board of the National Nuclear Regulator, and the National Nuclear Regulator then stated that they are not a rehabilitation company and they do not have the funds to rehabilitate the radioactive mine residue areas. So that is the current situation. But I also just want to mention there had been many reports that had been published, both academic reports and also governmental reports regarding the radioactivity within the West and Far West Rand Goldfields. That is within the Wonderfontein-Spruit Catchment Management Area. In fact, if we were to stack these reports, it will be 5 meters high. The bibliography of these reports will be more than 210 pages long. So there is not insufficient evidence regarding the radioactivity within the West and Far West Rand goldfields. In fact, in 2009, the Department of Water and Sanitation, it was then the Department of Water Affairs, and the National Nuclear Regulator produced a report which showed that there are 36 radioactive hotspots within the Wonderfonteinspruit catchment management area. Furthermore, the National Nuclear Regulator also commissioned the Brink report. It was from Dr. Renier Bartel, in which it also found that the most significant radioactive pathways are the inhalation and the ingestion of radioactive dust from tailing storage facilities and the deposition of the dust on crops. Although there had been recommendations made to address these issues, to date these issues had not been addressed. So the situation still continues with regards to the risk and hazards pertaining to the radioactivity within the Wonderfonteinspruit catchment management catchment management area. Then I also want to mention there was a report done by the Northwest University. The researcher was David Hamann, although there had been some contentious issues regarding that. It mentions that the cattle that drink water and graze within the Wonderfonteinspruit catchment management area, that the metals in their spleen, the kidneys, the liver, the tissue and the bones are significantly elevated. But perhaps of interest here is that the uranium levels in the kidneys of the cattle within the Wonderfonteinspruit, it has been estimated that it was 4,350 times higher than the uranium within the cattle within the control group. In other words, the cattle that do not drink water within the Wonderfonteinspruit. So this perhaps would explain the risks and hazards that have been identified by government reports and academic reports. It was also found that the sediment within the Wonderfonteinspruit catchment management area within the West and Far West Rand, that the metals in the sediment, the metals are adsorbed in the sediment because it's heavy metals, that the sediments, the regulatory limits for cadmium, cobalt, copper, zinc, arsenic and uranium are significantly exceeded within the sediment, and that although these metals are adsorbed in the sediment, it can be mobilized or solubilized under plausible environmental conditions such as acid mine drainage, acid rain, as well as the sediment being disturbed by cattle drinking from the water, that is the turbulence, or as a result of the drying out of the sediment and a sudden influx of water. So that perhaps just explains that there are risks and hazards within the Witwatersrand goldfields regarding to uranium and radioactivity, and that this will continue for many years after mine closure. There are some responsible mining companies within the Witwatersrand goldfields who are attempting to address these issues in a very responsible manner, and here I wish to refer to Sibanye-Stillwater as well as to Goldfields South Deep Mine, their operations, and currently also the mining company that has now acquired the mining right from the liquidated Mintails Group, which is Pan-African Resources. So we express the hope that these mining companies, including Harmony Gold, as the last men standing, will now address these legacy issues in a very responsible manner.
Yeah, look, I wouldn't hold my breath on that because, you look at the Nicky Oppenheimer, second wealthiest man in South Africa. I believe his assets amount to nearly 100 billion rand. That's about $6 billion US dollars. Even if you gave 20% of that to clean up the mess that his old gold mine companies caused, that would be a huge way in fixing this problem. And I think it's disgusting and disgraceful that even though there's legislation in place that says that historically companies that have actually caused the pollution should fix it, nothing is being done to actually enforce that. That to me just stinks.
Scott, I agree with you. I agree with you that the historic mining companies that made their profits by exploiting the resources of our people, of our country, that there should be some form of, I don't know, a super fund or whatever, where they should assist with the legacy, what has happened within the Witwatersrand goldfields, because what we have seen is not only gaping holes in the ground and polluted rivers and ecologically degraded areas. What we have also seen is unenriched and disrupted communities. So with that, I fully agree with you.
Yeah. Look, when I was a young man, I was probably about 15, 16, I lived in Pinetown. And the property behind our house was a tire factory. And when they moved, they had to clean it up. They had to get rid of everything. Legally, they had to clean it up, and they did, and then someone built a house on that property. But for these big mining houses to just walk away and leave the mess for the communities to handle, and of course, because of that, people get sick. I see that the average death rate in South Africa is now the average lifespan in South Africa is reduced now to about 56 years. It used to be about 60 years in 1994. So people are dying earlier. And a lot of that is because of the pollution that's happening in Gauteng as a result of these big mining houses. Now, look, I'm cognizant that we've got to wrap up very shortly. Just regarding looking to the future, do you see any hope for Gauteng and getting these big mining houses to clean up the mess they've left?
Well, first I just want to mention that with regards to the health impacts of uranium, uranium is both chemically toxic and also radioactive. The radioactive impacts, the health impacts, is of course are of course of lesser concern than the toxicity impacts, because the toxicity impacts can cause chronic and acute nephrotoxicity, that is kidney disease or kidney failure. But there have been new novel findings that it can also impact upon the endocrine disrupting compounds, that is, it mimics estrogen. It can also result in impacts to the brain, and of course also to intergenerational impacts. So that is to do with the DNA. So, but it is crucial that there must be some high confidence, independent epidemiological study conducted in order to determine what are the impacts of uranium, but not only of uranium. Remember, the tailings, the residue of tailing storage facilities contain a wide spectrum of metals. These metals include manganese, aluminium, cobalt, copper, zinc, and so forth, arsenic, which is a metalloid. So all of these impacts have to be addressed in terms of an epidemiological study, but up till now, there has been no epidemiological study conducted, and it is for that reason that there can be no evidence adduced that there is a causal link between the mine waste, the gold mining waste, that is the residue, and the anecdotal evidence of illnesses within a community. So that I would think is very important. There had been an attempt done by Professor Frank Winder of the Northwest University, or he was formerly of the Northwest University, and IARC, which is an arm of World Health Organization, to conduct a screening assessment and we were contracted by the World Health Organization to do the collection of human hair. We collected 1,600 samples of human hair in order to determine the uranium levels in human hair, because uranium or any heavy metals often then accumulate in teeth or in nails or in bone or in human hair, and human hair, of course, is a non-invasive analysis of uranium. But unfortunately, that research was it was not. We could not conclude that there was high levels of uranium in the hair of communities that live within the gold fields of South Africa. So that was inconclusive. So that is just what I wanted to mention. But what is very important is, of course, that we can establish from an independent and high confidence epidemiological study the causal link between anecdotal evidences of human health risks and issues and impacts, and also the mining waste.
You know, when you said World Health Organization, my hair stood on end, because that organization is just an antithesis to what it's supposed to be doing. And, you know, I think it's quite disgusting that this report that you said should be done is not being done. And it doesn't surprise me, because the WHO doesn't do its job. It's just a political organization for the one world government. That's all it is. Now, I've got another PDF here that we haven't talked about yet. Before we close off, this is going to be made available again to people through the Loving Life TV forum. Now, can you speak to this document? What is it all about, so that people who might be interested can actually pull that down from Loving Life TV? It's selected extracts from South Africa's environmental legislation, challenges with the management of gold tailings within the Witwatersrand goldfields, and case studies.
Yes, I was asked by the geomechanical, I can't see, let me just see, the Australian geomechanical, the Australian Centre for Geomechanics,
Right.
to present a keynote address on this. That was in 2000, and if you just get 2019.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if there is a summary of all the issues relating to mining, gold mining. It, for example, discusses the fact that waste, mining waste, is considered to be the second greatest environmental risk next to global warming in terms of the European Environmental Bureau and then United Nations Environmental Protection Agency, because of the fact that mining waste creates often irreversible and very long-lasting impacts on ecosystems. It also, and it's all, you will see in the document, there's references to all the academic and governmental papers. It also has a section on acid mine drainage, because acid mine drainage also contains uranium that is within the Witwatersrand goldfields and its radioactive progeny. It also refers to radioactivity and uranium. It also refers to all the legislation that covers the environmental issues. So it refers to the Mineral and Petroleum Resources Development Act, the National Nuclear Regulators Act, the National Water Act, the National Environmental Management Act. So all of that is included in this paper. And if perhaps your viewers cannot download it from your website, I'm very willing to disclose it to them, or to distribute it to them, because it has been published. Yeah.
Yeah, well, look, we'll have it on our forum. And just for everybody watching, if you haven't registered on lovinglifetv.com, please do so, and make sure that you click get the daily email. And what will happen is you'll get every day the email with all the new links for videos that have been put up, the live streams that have happened, and the live stream that is happening the next day. And you'll also have all the forum links, all the new articles in this amazing forum that Nat Quinn looks after and does a great job. And we will have these 2 PDFs that we've shown tonight available for download from that forum. But if you get the daily email, you'll see the link right at the top in the forum. It'll say free downloadable PDF, and there'll be these 2 PDFs that you can download. That'll be tomorrow's daily email. All right, I'm going to wrap up this live stream now, Mariette. You see, I did pretty good. It's just about an hour, isn't it?
Yes, and it's time to go to bed now for me.
Mariette, thank you so much for joining us. Any last words before I wrap up?
No, all I want to say is that it is very essential for civil society to be watchdogs. It's very important for civil society to raise their voices in order to hold our government and also industry accountable. I think without the voice of civil society, remember we are a participatory democracy, so apathy is perhaps the evil within our country. For people not to speak out, that would result in these issues, these environmental degradation issues, the pollution, that will never be resolved. So I really appeal, I beg our people in South Africa to please speak out, to take part in public participation processes in order for us to hold our government and also our business people accountable.
Right. Okay. Mariette, thank you so much. Have a good sleep, and I'm sure we'll catch up again in the near future. Take care. Bye for now.
Thank you very much for the opportunity, Scott, and keep well.
You're very welcome. All right, guys, that was Mariette Liefferink, and from the organization called FSE, which basically investigates these conditions of mines when it comes to things like cyanide and uranium and other nasties, and obviously does a lot of other work. As I said a moment ago, there are 2 PDFs that'll be put up on our forum overnight. If you're interested in getting those, please just make sure that you subscribe to lovinglifetv.com, and with the daily email you'll get, tomorrow's, there'll be links to those 2 PDFs that you can download free. All right, I've burbled on enough. I'm going to go out with Hier Bly Ek Boer. I know that Marius will like this one, so here we go. Have a great evening, everybody. Oh, and before I go, don't forget tomorrow night we're going to be unpacking, going down the rabbit hole of those 2 massive bank accounts, the white spiritual boy and the young, what is the other one? Oh my gosh, here we are. Spiritual Wonder Boy is the other bank account. So we're going to be going into the alleged origins of all this money, which is a huge amount of money. It's got something like 30 zeros before you actually get to the figure at the end, which is the digital money sitting in these bank accounts. It's an extraordinary amount of money. I've gone through the internet, I've used other sources to get documents, and after we have the live stream tomorrow night, which I think you'll find very interesting, I will be making available the PDFs that I've got, which actually give further information on the supposed history of these bank accounts, which are huge. That's all I can say. They're absolutely huge. Please remember to register on lovinglifetv.com to be kept informed. Please like this video. Please share this video. And I'm going to go out with Hier Bly Ek Boer. And before I do, thank you, mods, for keeping a good eye on the side chat there for us. Here we go.
Meer as 61,000 van ons voorvaders het op die grens van ons gesterwe, sodat ons vry kan wees. Die is my land, die is my reg. Hier is ek boer. Van stof is ek gemaak en sal ek terugkeer. Die Bybel is die woord waaruit ek leer, soos die grond op die aarde. Maar hier bly ek staan en ek draai nie om, want jy maak my nie bang nie. Hier bly ek boer. Die is my land waarvoor ek sal veg. Die is my bloed, my sweet, my reg. Die is die plek waar my voorvaders leef. Die is my land, hoor wat ek jou sê. Die is my land, wat my mense voor. Hier bly ek voor. Soos 'n blaassam in die somer wat vreugde bring. My oupa wat maniekiru kon sing, soos hy stap deur die lande. Hier was hy boer. My wortels lê diep in die grond geplant. Hy sien soos my pa, los ek vir jou die land, en jy hoef nie te vrees nie. Hier sal jy boer. Die is my land waarvoor ek sal veg. Die is my bloed, my sweet, my reg. Die is die plek waar my voorvaders leef. Die is my land, hoor wat ek jou sê. Die is my land, wat my mense voor. Hier bly ek voor. Die leeu sal kom, 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 die leeu sal kom.